The following is a presentation of TFNN. The Tom O'Brien Show is produced every business day after the market close. Tom takes your phone calls from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time using the data available at that time.
Let's go to Glenn in Massachusetts. Hey, Glenn, what's going on?
You know what is good for us is Tom O'Brien providing an unbiased source of information for us investors. You don't have an agenda. It's just to cut through everything and to give us the facts. I want to thank you.
Well, I appreciate it, man.
And now, here's Tom O'Brien.
Welcome, folks. This is Tom O'Brien of TFNN. We go 5 days a week. We go 2 hours a day. We go 24 hours a day on the internet at TFNN.com. Always remember, folks, whatever you think about, you bring about. Whatever you focus on grows. Hope everyone had a great day, safe day. Let's make it a great night, folks. Let's take a look at one of our 4 agreements. Take action on your ideas. Doing your best means to take action. You can have many great ideas in your head, but without action upon an idea, there'll be no manifestation, no results, and no rewards. And with that 4 agreement, folks, I want to welcome Ambassador John Bolton to TFNN. Ambassador Bolton, he was the U.S. representative to the United Nations in 2005, 2006, the Undersecretary of State for Arms Control from 1989 to 1993. Ambassador Bolton, welcome to TFNN.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. You know, when we look around the world, okay, you know, I do financial news every day, but of course, you know, when we look around the world, bottom line, finances are impacted from what happens around the world. What do you feel is the hottest issue that the United States faces right now that the bureaucracy doesn't have the political will to face?
Well, unfortunately, there are a range of them in the international arena, in the domestic arena as well. I think in national security terms, part of our problem has been that the administration, the president himself, are so focused on domestic issues that they've just not even paid adequate attention to the challenges we face internationally. So if you look around the world today, you've got this enormous turmoil in the Middle East. It's having a dramatic effect on oil and other commodity prices. You can see the price of gasoline going up at the tank, and we have no grand strategy, no policy to deal with it. We still have Iran pursuing nuclear weapons. North Korea has nuclear weapons. So these are some of the immediate things that we look at. There are a lot more out there as well that stretch over a longer period and are even more difficult to resolve.
When you look at the issues across the world, and we talk about the United States interest, you know, it's interesting looking at when I see what's happening. Whether we're dealing with dictatorships over there, monarchies over there, and it seems to me that the people over there are saying, "I want to be free." Now, is there a way that they could be free? And, you know, we don't have our young men and women basically, you know, getting in the middle of that? Where's your thought process and all that?
Well, I think just to look at the Middle East in particular, I think certainly some people are saying that, and they're very clearly they want to be rid of some of the authoritarian regimes in the region. Unfortunately, there are also a lot of other people whose idea of a real democratic election is one person, one vote, one time. They've got something really quite different in mind, and I think that's why people are concerned about, for example, developments in Egypt, the most populous Arab country. Obviously, we have a civil war going on in Libya. We still see the conflict within the Islamic world and between Arabs and Persians over the tiny island nation of Bahrain, which probably doesn't sound too important until you look at its geographical location and its impact on all of the oil-producing states of the Persian Gulf region. So it's certainly there are aspirations for people to be able to have control over their own government. I think that's true, but there are a lot of other conflicting agendas out there as well.
When you say conflicting agendas, Ambassador, are we talking about in-house, meaning in those environments, whether it's politically or militarily, and or is it the United States politically or militarily?
No, in those countries. For example,
Yes.
I think in Egypt, you have people in the Muslim Brotherhood who were very much opposed to the Mubarak regime, but who really fundamentally don't want a democratic society as we understand it. I'm sure they're prepared to use the forms and processes of democracy to try and get their own way. But just as we've seen Hamas in the Gaza Strip take control of that part of Palestinian territory, we've seen Hezbollah in Lebanon really subvert the Cedar Revolution there and make democracy taking it back to just being an aspiration of the Lebanese people again. So I think there's a lot to worry about, and I just don't see the administration paying attention to it. The way they handled Libya is a good example. The president announces we're going to use force to protect innocent Libyan civilians. He says our objective is to remove Gaddafi, but he's not prepared to use force to do that. Well, who exactly are we protecting the innocent Libyan civilians from? We're protecting them from Gaddafi. And do we really think they'll be safe as long as he remains in power?
Now, when you bring up Libya, does that battle, you have plenty of experience in the State Department, does that battle take place inside the State Department and or the White House, or how does that work?
Well, in the case of a dispute like Libya, where obviously we've used military force, you've got views in the Defense Department, and from all we can tell, they were very much opposed to using force in Libya. You've got the State Department, you've got the National Security Council in the White House. Congress has a role in this, and some of the political White House advisors in this administration, especially.
When we talk bureaucracies, it seems to me that we can go back pretty far. I mean, that every time that we're involved in a dispute, because most of these were not basically, most of them, I mean, the Korean War is still a dispute, right? So these disputes that we have, there was, but it seems that they never come down to the point that people that are in power, I mean, and I'm talking about whether, our bureaucracy won't make hard decisions to come to an end of a conflict.
Well, sometimes the circumstances don't permit it, but the real decision maker is on anything really significant for the United States is not the bureaucracy. Ultimately, it's the president, because he controls them. He appoints the top people. And although I can tell you from my own experience in the federal government, the bureaucracy is a pretty awesome thing, particularly in national security matters, it's up to the president to referee the differences and to try and come up with a coherent policy. So ultimately, Harry Truman said it in the way we all remember, pointing at his desk, he'd say, the buck stops here. It stops at the Oval Office.
Do you think there's a way that, well, here, let me rephrase this. When we talk terrorism versus military, let's say, battles, it seems to me that what we have in all these different countries, there's plenty of folks out there that very well may want to hurt their own people and other people, versus a military type of conflict. And specifically what I mean about that is that you know who the enemy is, you're going after them. And where does all that stand right now in the world?
Well, some of the regimes that we're most worried about in the Middle East are exactly the regimes that are financing and arming terrorists, or what we call state sponsors of terrorism. Iran is probably the best example of that. I mentioned Hamas and Hezbollah a second ago. Both of them, one Sunni, one Shia, are armed and financed by Iran. And that is a threat to us globally. We saw the impact of a global threat of terrorism on 9/11. That's why we had to overthrow the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. And the threat of international terrorism is one that we're engaged in a long struggle with. And even in recent years in this country, you can see how we came very, very close to being subjected to a terrorist attack again. Some of them, the case of Major Hassan down at Fort Hood, unfortunately turned out to be real, and people died as a result of it. So I think it's a struggle that's going to go on for a long time, and I think we have to understand that part of the reason the terrorists can flourish is that there are states, countries that are prepared to support them.
hypothetically we have not hypothetically. Let's stay with. We'll go to Afghanistan for a second. It seems to me that in Afghanistan, on a personal level, what absolutely blows my mind is that, you have a guy named like Karzai, and, we go in there, and then all of a sudden it seems that, bottom line, he wants to go somewhere else. It doesn't seem that there's a connection here. Am I correct in that assessment, or what do you think about that?
Well, I think what you're expressing is a frustration that a lot of Americans feel, that when we go into a country, we go into it for our own interest. I honestly don't think we're in these countries to make them into the Switzerland of Central Asia or something like that. We go in for our own interest, but the policies we're pursuing do have a benefit for the people of those countries, and yet they never seem to appreciate it. They never thank us for it. A lot of them engage in corrupt behavior. A lot of them are undercutting us behind our back. A lot of them are criticizing us in public, even as our brave young men and women are out there fighting. And I very well understand why Americans say, well, what's going on here? Why are we putting up with it? And I think you have to look at what the underlying American interest is, and to say we're there for our own interest, not to benefit them. That's a nice side benefit from it, but we're there to advance our own interest and protect ourselves, and that's why it's better to, in this case, fight the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan than to allow them to have a safe haven from which they can attack us and our other friends and allies as they did on 9/11.
When you say our own interest, with that definition, I understand what you just answered there is that it's definitely safety. Does that interest come into the energy fields also, energy market?
Well, I think you have to be aware of the consequences of terrorist activity in the oil-producing regions, having the Persian Gulf under the hegemony of a state, a government adverse to the United States. That's why back in the first Bush administration in 1990, 1991, we opposed the invasion of Iraq by Saddam Hussein, and ultimately that President Bush put together a coalition that pushed Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait, because his clear intention was to dominate all of the oil fields on the Arabian Peninsula. I'm very worried that Iran has the same aspiration today, and that they're threatening regimes that are friendly to us. It's why we have bases in many of the countries there. And we're entitled to defend those interests, just as we defended Europe during the Cold War and backed it up with the Marshall Plan to revive their economies. Had a huge economic benefit for us, too.
I appreciate you coming on, Ambassador, and I can absolutely see why you drive politicians crazy. Because you're clear, you're concise, and listen, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and I look forward to having you coming on again.
Look forward to it.
Thank you, sir. This is Tom OBrien. This is TFNN. Our phone number is 877-927-6648. Give us a call, folks. We'll be coming right back.